That's more like it. You can tell by the grin on my face that worked.
I believe that's the fastest 0 to 60 time we've ever recorded in the 4 years we've been doing it. Paul, you know, we've been testing cars on Hot or Not around our track for 4 years now. And you know what the fastest car that we've ever had out here is?
I do, I remember it well, and it's the Porsche GT3.
Yeah, that went 101.12. And today we have a car, the McLaren 570S, that might be able to go faster. So it's time to hand over the car to the former Stig on Top Gear USA and see if we can set a track record. But before we do that, let's look and see what is under the hood. Under the hood is a place for your luggage because this is a proper mid-engined sports car. So let me pop the hood for Paul and let him tell you what's back there.
All right, you guys ready for this? Here we go. Voila! So if we could see the engine in the 570S, what we would see is a twin-turbo V8. It's all aluminum, and it's 3.8 liters in capacity, 562 horsepower, and 443 pound-feet of torque in the 570S. Now this is the same basic engine they use in all the McLarens, and that means this engine actually can be bumped and bumped and bumped, getting up into the center ranges where you start looking at 700-800 horsepower out of this very same engine. So it's an interesting thing that McLaren does. They use the same basic bones for the car itself and then give you a lot of different levels of car at very, very different price and performance points, all based on the same basic package.
Hey Paul, before you tell them about the transmission, let me make sure to prop up the cover here so it doesn't damage the car.
Is that one of the options on the car?
It's not, but this is a matte black key. That is over $500.
So the 3.8 liter twin turbo V8 sitting right in the middle of the car is bolted to a 7-speed dual clutch gearbox behind it. And it gives the car just fantastic weight distribution. And while this car doesn't necessarily compete with true supercars on the McLaren sort of echelon, it does have all the bones. And that's maybe the most interesting thing about this vehicle is the weight distribution, the dry sump oiling system on the car, which allows them to lower the engine really far down and lower the center of gravity of the car, gives us really, really good power. Excellent shifting characteristics. This thing should be a rocket around the track.
Yeah, and over $200,000. It's the entry-level McLaren.
That is the thing you got to wrap your head around for mere mortals.
I know, but it does compete with the Porsche 911 Turbo and the Audi R8 directly, and those are some pretty fast cars, Paul.
Yeah, and that actually kind of puts it in there with the GT3, the 911 Turbo, and those are the cars that are sitting right at our leaderboard, and that should make this pretty fun.
So this car comes in at $233,000 as tested. And one of the reasons it's a little bit more expensive is because of this. It's a hard top convertible. And while we're waiting for the top to come up, let me give you some other numbers. McLaren says 0 to 60 in just over 3 seconds and a top speed of 204 miles an hour.
All right, when we're looking at wheels, tire, and suspension on the McLaren 570S, there's a lot to talk about. As a matter of fact, for this entire car, there's a lot to talk about. You know, when you think about the production of most vehicles, you know, most cars are made of some sort of steel chassis. Some super high-end have aluminum chassis. This car actually uses a carbon fiber monocell. So that means the entire basically area that the passengers sit and the whole front of the vehicle is one big giant piece of carbon fiber. It's very close to how a race car is made, but in this case it's somewhere in between and a pretty big step above anything that it competes against. When we look at the suspension, it's a double wishbone, of course. It has adaptive shocks and anti-roll bars. Now, it is slightly less spec than you'll get in the higher end, more track-oriented McLarens, where they actually have a system that connects, getting rid of the anti-roll bars and connects the car diagonally, the suspension systems. Really trick stuff. But what's on this is also very, very good. Amazing bones on this car. And then when you look at the wheels and tires, of course, we've got Pirelli Corsas here. We've got 19-inch in the front that are 225 in diameter. And in the rear, we have a 285 diameter on a 20-inch wheel. So it's a true staggered setup here, not just with width, but also the wheel size as well. And then brakes, they're massive. They're basically 15-inch diameter carbon ceramics. And just so you know, when you start looking on that option sheet on these cars, how quickly things get very, very silly. This yellow paint, just the paint, is over $1,000. These wheels, these lightweight wheels, $5,000 option. But the whole package here, carbon fiber, carbon brakes, big wheels and tires, amazing suspension. It should be a heck of a good car around the track. Now the 570S is supposed to do 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. Of course, you guys should know by now we're at altitude, and that usually hurts us by around a second or so. So let's see what actually happens here. Should be good stuff. You can tell by the grin on my face that worked.
Normally, like you use 2/3 of the track.
Yeah.
You use like a quarter of the track.
I know. I was already coasting by the time we. So that was 3.46 seconds. Now I want you to kind of pay attention to that because it's rated at 3.2. At altitude, we almost always see the cars 1 second slower. That's very, very typical for us. So to see it 0.2 of a second slower, 2.5 of a second slower, that shows you the capacity of this engine. It makes really good horsepower, even up here in Colorado elevations.
Or McLaren's underrating it.
Or McLaren's underrating it.
I believe that's the fastest 0 to 60 time we've ever recorded in the 4 years we've been doing it. The previous best, I think, was the BMW X6M. So that bodes well for its track ability. And the 3 fastest cars on our leaderboard are the Porsche GT3 at 101.12, then followed by the Chevy Grand Sport Corvette 101.45, and then a tuned 911 Turbo 996 at 101.57. So if this car can get into the 101 range, it'll certainly be in the top 3. If it can get below 101, well, then we've got a track record.
Now, if you ever been to a Cars and Coffee, or you happen to have one of these cars, one of the greatest things about these types of vehicles is the detail work that's done. It's very typical when you look at all sorts of mass-produced vehicles that they have little fake vents and fake scoops and fake ducts, you know, just to make them look cool. And what you find out when you look at a car like this is everything is real and everything is designed in a wind tunnel, and it all works. All of it helps these cars do what they do. But there are also all these little details that really only come from companies that have the pedigree of, you know, something like McLaren, where they're racing in Formula One and they have a 50-year history in motorsports. Everything is functional. That's the theme here. So when you look at the splitter on the front, or the ducting that cool the radiators for the engine, of course, that's sitting in the back of the car, all the airflow that this car manages is done for a very particular reason, and that is to minimize the drag across the body. 204 mile an hour top speed, I think they achieved that, but also at the same time maximize the downforce that's produced by the air flowing over the car. Typical car that you drive actually has some lift. But when you get into these supercars, or cars that are designed with the intent of being used on the track, you find that they actually start producing downforce. And all these bits and pieces combine together to help the air flow over this car very efficiently and also very effectively.
We're about a second and a half away from the track record. So I talked with the McLaren engineers this week, and they said that to get the fullest speed out of the car, you have to lower the air pressure in the tires to 1.8 bars. Luckily I googled that, and that's about 28 psi, so let's do that. Let's lower the tire temperature. 1036. So fun, but maybe too much fun.
It is. It's that 285 tire on the back, so it just lights it up anywhere you go. It's got so much power. It's so much fun, and just trying to get it to hook up through the corner. Remember, this is just this isn't the Super Trofeo R tire that you'd get on the higher range cars. Right. This is more the equivalent of like a Pilot Super Sport or PS4 or whatever that's on this car. So that
sport tire, not a track tire.
Exactly. So it's going to limit it a bit. I'm not even looking at that. It's just amazing to drive this car.
Coming out of the very back of the front wheel well here, we notice this strange piece of plastic here. And what that is, it's an extractor, and that extractor takes that air from the radiator and it pops it out past the front tire. The leading edge of the front tire, if this pokes out into the airstream, actually starts to create high pressure, and that means that the air that's coming underneath the splitter won't have anywhere to go. So all these little details are trying to pop the air out around the tire, which actually sucks the air out from under the car, which pulls the nose down into the pavement. When the air comes channeling over the shoulder line of the car, there's an intake here to grab the air, and of course a much larger one on the side to pull air, and all this air is feeding into the radiators and intercoolers for the car. When you produce a lot of horsepower and you tuck your engine in to the point where there's no even engine cover, you don't have the normal airflow you'd have in a front engine car. So because of that, you're gonna have to put a lot of ducting around the vehicle. And as we get to the back of the car, it becomes more and more about heat management, because again, we were trying to exhaust all of this heat from that twin turbo engine that's tucked in there. And that means that we have to get all that air out. And what they're doing here is, of course, we've got a lot of venting on the top here. You could actually chuck a couple of eggs on there and a few brats and have a nice barbecue. There's a lot of heat coming off of here. And then also there's venting all through the back of the car, even in the tail light. But more importantly, look at this diffuser underneath the car. This has a real diffuser with a full flat bottom all the way forward. Now the thing about all of these really cool little details we're talking about is this is the entry level McLaren. If you ever get a chance to go look up close at a 765 or a Senna, something in that range, those cars are absolutely amazing. But what they're doing is they're managing the airflow through the car, not just around it, under it, and over it. They're also going great lengths to make sure the air that goes through the car does it as efficiently as possible.
You too can take your McLaren or your Honda Civic out here. Visit IMI Motorsports below and rent the track or bring your motorcycle out here for a lot of hooligan fun. By far your best lap.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Yeah.
At least it's in the ballpark.
Yeah, so now we are in the ballpark.
So much more power than grip.
Yeah.
It's such a finesse exercise to try and get lap time out of it.
I think you're number 4 now on the leaderboard.
Okay.
But you're working your way down.
I'm working. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Paul, fastest car, 0 to 60, and certainly well down the leaderboard. I think the car is hot. What do you think?
Oh, I absolutely adore it. It's so much fun. It easily, like what's there could easily set the track record, except for the tires it comes with. And it comes with more of just a GT high performance tire. The only McLaren really that comes with that. And it's a 285 in the back. And this thing's got so much power and so much balance and so much poise. It just needs more grip. But don't get me wrong, it's an amazing car. Like it's not the fastest car I've driven around the track, but by far the most fun car and the best car I've driven around the track.
So there you go, double hot.
Hot, hot, hot.
And now McLaren, please send us a 720.
765, 600 LT, those will work. We just need that Trofeo R tire and we got the record.
All right, thanks for watching, guys, and thank you, Paul. See you guys next time. Ciao.